my friend. I'm Pat Sloan for C&T Publishing to tell you about Teach Me to Make My First Quilt. I am so thrilled to have this book available for you. As soon as I started making quilts, I pretty much got tapped to teach. The local shops were like, can you teach? Can you teach? And so I developed a teaching course for beginners. And what I did is take that knowledge from all the years that I taught beginners into a book. I want everybody to be successful immediately. I want you to be able to know the terminology, understand why certain things are important. You can change them and not do them or do them differently, but if you understand why they're important, then you can make really valuable decisions. And I tell you all that in here. And it's very concise. We're not sort of all over the place. We're just getting in here to understand patchwork, a tiny little bit of applique, and then quilting your own quilt and putting the binding on. So it's got the whole process. I focused on photography. There's 140 photos in here of step by step of the different items, the different techniques. And then on top of that, there are 9 projects. Each project takes you through a different technique that you're learning, you're adding. It's a building block effect. And I'd love to have everybody start with one simple project, because that way you can finish it. And the table runner is that project. So for the book, this is the first project. You can make a table runner, you can get it completed, and you see the entire process of making a quilt in a smaller project. And that's how I love to have it focused. Now there are bigger projects like the rail fence, and there's also a sampler, because a lot of quilt makers love to learn by doing all the techniques in just one block at a time and then putting them into a sampler quilt. And so there is a sampler pattern available as well for the book. So what I want to do is show you some of the sections of the book and the projects. So let's take a look. Taking a look at my book, we're going to start with the basics, of course, because that really helps people who really don't have an idea of the type of feet they need, what a walking foot looks like, some other things like that. You know, it's got all the sort of basic details that need to be talked about. Needles, how you change your rotary cutter blade, and there's little tip boxes here and there on the whole book. We've got things like, you know, how to, you know, what are all the different components of the quilt, you know, the terminology. That's always the big thing, how to read a pattern. It is a technique, and if you've not ever read a pattern, there's a few things to know, but it's not hard. It's like reading a book. Just have to know a few things all about fabric, because fabric for quilting might be different than what they're used to for using for clothing, or maybe not ever using fabric before to sew with. There are some properties that you can learn, and you should learn. Here we go for cutting, all kinds of tips and techniques for cutting, being sure you don't get that bow in your strips, all kinds of important techniques, sewing and pressing, from ergonomics to getting that 1/4 inch. That 1/4 inch is mega important. Here's my test to be sure, and why it's important to get that 1/4 inch is because this is math, and it's all goes together in a mathematical way, so that it's, you know, 2 + 2 would equal 4, but if your block is 2 1/4, then you're not going to be the right size. So it's all about getting everything the right size and learning how to do that for your machine. Now I have some tips for nesting units as you're sewing along, and as you're doing the blocks, you're going to be using these techniques. Chain piecing, and what is that? Kind of fun things you may not have tried yet if you are first learning to quilt. Squaring up blocks, and why that's important, because some blocks are formed by doing a little bit of oversizing, and then you trim them down so that you get a more accurate block right away. And then of course checking the size of your finished one, because once again they have to be sewn to the next unit, so they need to be the same size. Everything being the same size is a kind of key to quilt making. Now I also believe that trying a little bit of every technique right when you're learning learning, let you understand how it works, such as applique. A lot of beginner quilts have a little bit of applique. Just to introduce you, this is fusible applique, and we'll just cut away a lot of that fusible so that it is soft. And you can see here the window or donut method of doing that. So your quilt is very soft. And then I show you 3 different stitches that you could use to adhere your applique down. So all of those fun things, assembling. Once you get all your blocks done, you're going to put it together. You're either going to set it side by side, such as this one, or using sashing, which makes your quilt a little bit bigger, but it also is very forgiving because you don't have to match all the intersections. And also with this one, there is not a lot of matching, which is why the rail fence is perfect for your first bigger quilt. Okay, there's still a little bit more to do. You have to get your quilt basted and then put binding on, quilt it, sorry, you got to quilt it, and then put the binding on. And so we have a section here about that. And quilting, here's a little bit of quilting around the applique or quilting right through it. You don't have to outline things. You can do very simple quilting and just your quilt will be gorgeous. And then a label to make it all very easy. This is my triangle label, which is super easy to do. Okay, so after that, I have got block construction. I go through 9 different blocks, which then are put into a project. But first, the book is set up with just the blocks so that you learn how to assemble them. Like this block goes into the table runner. This block goes into the rail fence quilt. So each time when you're making these, and here's step by step so that you understand how the rail fence goes together, what the construction is. Here's how to do some intersections. And that is how each block is set up. So you go through and know all the components of that block. Plus, there's tip windows all along to give you just extra things to learn. And then after, plus we're going to even do flying geese. You're going to understand what that is, get that part of your tool set ready and for being a fabulous quilt maker. And then here's a little bit of applique down here at the end. Super easy. Okay, after that, here's more applique. So once again, stepping you through, and then starts the projects. And so what I'm going to do now is I will just take you and show you the quilts from the book, the project pages. And there you go, a walk through how to teach somebody to make their first quilt, whether it is yourself or somebody else. There are so many good, solid points in here that keep you moving through the whole process so that you complete your first quilt and feel so wonderful that you'll want to make another one. So once again, I'm Pat Sloan, and you can visit me at my website, patsloan.com, and you can find my book at C&T Publishing.